Hey all, this is Anton.
This is Tanner.
This is Richie.
Oh, and y'all wanted a twist. I'm back. You thought I was going to pull an Axel Ryman, but no, I'm here too.
Thought you were going to pull a Captain Blue 50 or some shit, or a Great Zombie Ron, but no, he is here. It is the Mexican Base Monkey. Happy New Year all. We've been waiting to do this playthrough for a hell of a long time, and, you know, I couldn't do it without Mexi, and I wanted to bring Tanner and Richie along for the ride as well. Just a forewarning though, if any member of this call, this comm group per se, isn't available, we will be going ahead with the playthrough as is, because it is a long one. So if Mexi's busy one weekend, we'll continue, and then he can come back in the next session, so on and so forth. So, let's begin The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Basically, if one of us aren't here, it's because we're dead. Send help.
Oh god, the Yiga clan got him.
All I wanted was some bananas.
How is it that bananas are the most OP, food substance in this entire game? I love it.
High levels of potassium, I would think.
I mean, it's basic chemistry at that point, really.
Oh, Breath of the Wild. Look at it being like some kind of movie game and whatnot.
It's cinematic. I mean, it's not quite the whistle theme playing. Ocarina of Time's intro is just sort of iconic on its own, mythical level, but I mean, this is a really interesting way to take this Zelda game, starting it all cinematically, not a press start, not a entering your profile. No, we're getting into the shebang.
Actually, just like with that convention, Breath of the Wild actually broke a number of 3D Zelda conventions, kind of went back to basics while also refining the open world formula. And I gotta say, I haven't played many open world games, but out of the few that I have, this is probably my favourite, because it does a lot of stuff right, it's got tons of quality of life features, and I just like the world, the characters, and the story, really. But Tanner, when did you first get into Breath of the Wild, mate? Did you get it on launch, March 2017?
Absolutely, day one. I bought my Switch, I bought Breath of the Wild, and I was like, I'm going to play this, and I'm going to enjoy this. And what ended up happening is I got it, and then my family was like, surprised we're going on a trip to the mountains. And wow. I was like, well, because it came out, kind of winterish time, or rather the time when I was playing it. And so when we went to go do that, I ended up pretty much playing the entire game in the mountains portably. And it was because this game has a lot of climbing, it has a lot of atmosphere. Oh, it was real good.
That's kind of aesthetic, really. I just like the imagery of playing Zelda and you're climbing the mountains, and then there's actual mountains, behind you.
That's what it was like.
It's a total mood.
It is. It's an actual mood. When did you get into Breath of the Wild, Richard?
So I was also a launch day Breath of the Wilder, got my Switch, got Breath of the Wild, very excited to see what awaited. And was, to be honest, thoroughly pleased with pretty much the majority of the experience. There's a few little niggles here and there, as you'd expect. This is ultimately Nintendo's first real foray into open world gaming. Obviously, there's Xenoblade, but that is.
You could have just stopped with "It's Nintendo."
I could have done, but I blabber. It happens. So there's still a few things that could have been tweaked, but as a sort of first foray into it, it's fantastic. And it was really exciting to see this new take on the Zelda formula, because it sort of is, but sort of isn't, and that's really quite exciting to see. And I remember back in the day, when this came out, everyone was just like, oh my god, what if, all the franchises get a Breath of the Wild approach to their next iterations. And while, I would say that we sort of got that with Super Mario Odyssey, that was a taking the Mario formula, tweaking it, and trying to take it to the next level. But then we definitely did not we sort of got an attempt at it with Pokemon, but it was a much weaker attempt than any of the others. Oh!
That will show you the way.
The Sheikah Slate will be very important for our journey. It can lift up towers, it's basically your map, your inventory, and yes, it's a tablet, because this was also on the Wii U.
Like every game on the DS was like, oh hey, here's this newest, greatest technology. Like, was it Devil Summoner calls it a comp? Some other games will do like the whole cell phone site, but like almost half the games on the DS tried to be all cute and clever and be like, oh, your character has this neat piece of technology. Doesn't it look familiar?
Yeah, I remember actually. I think it was in Phantom Hourglass where you had to close the lid of the console to stamp, basically.
Classic problems though, but that was Phantom Hourglass. Phantom Hourglass was like tech demo extreme. Like they were trying to use every like aspect of the system in, I mean, quote unquote meaningful way, but they were really like hard pressed on that system. They were trying to show that like the way they made this tool was the way games should be played and should be enjoyed.
For better and for worse, of course.
Agree. It's the Nintendo way. You're gonna play our games our way, whether you like it or not.
Oh boy, that sequence there, just looking out and the title card of just all of Hyrule, and it very much is, you can see it, you can go there. And I know everyone took the mickey, but my god is it true.
So wait, we can go anywhere?
Well, maybe we'll have to do a few tasks first, and then we can go anywhere.
So, like, if I were to recommend we go to McDonald's, could we go there?
I'm not sure they have a branch in Hyrule, Mexa.
Well, that's looking like an open market in my eyes.
There we go. I now have a weapon.
Classic stick. Greatest of all tools. I mean, mankind's, like, entire success is hinged on the ability for us to pick up a stick and be like, I can use this.
Also, eating mushrooms, of course.
You're going to be picking up a lot of stuff as you go through the overworld here, so if you can see it, just grab it. It's not like you're going to run out of inventory space.
Aside from really Breath of the Wild, like, this was my first, like, hardcore foray into an open world game. Like, really before this, like, embarrassingly, like, the only other hard open world game I played was the first Assassin's Creed. So we're talking like before even like the people who do open world games knew what they were doing with open world games. And so that was kind of my reference point to any sort of open world game. But like, I mean, it gives you the basics, you know, find the tower, fill up your map, collect the things, move on to the next area. Well, I mean, they're the basics. It's not like a knock 'em. It's basically like the fundamentals. It's like how a platformer, jump on the platform, move across, avoid, like, it's just the fundamental bullet points of it. But no, Breath of the Wild does do its own thing with it. It does take its own change to the formula. But to me, it was just really interesting that, like, as someone who got two very far along points on the line of game development, like, I could see the hard through line between everything.
You have to forgive me if I fiddle with the controls a little bit as we go on. Mostly because I'm using a pad. I'm using my 8-bit controller here. Because my Joy-Cons have seen a lot of use over the past few years, and sadly, like most, they have succumbed to the dreaded drift, which Nintendo likes to just pretend does not exist. Like, even when it comes to lawsuits and whatnot, so, yeah.
Tom's Joy-Cons have decided to listen to Deja Vu a few too many times.
Yeah.
It's all that Euro pop, dude. Get it out.
Strange old man, a staple in Zelda games. I wonder who it could be.
Whom indeed. But what you were talking about, how this game, a lot of people saw it as like a new formula, but even like in the development, they saw this as a throwback to very specifically Zelda 1. I mean, even down to, if we're going back to bare minimum things, we're starting the game in the middle of nowhere, and our first action is to talk to an old man who provides us something that helps us. Like, it's literally the first 3 seconds of playing Zelda 1. It's just everything is now given, like, that context, that depth. Like, who is this man? This man has a character. He has a personality. It's no longer just take the sword, go on your adventure. But we still have the open world around these moments.
Alright, let's hold a couple of these. Show you a little trick to start with here.
So this is the thing that I found really, really cool about Breath of the Wild, is what they called the alchemy system. Basically, everything has an element, and every element can react with other things in realistic ways. So, for example, when you have a fire, doesn't matter what the fire is, if you can get an apple in there, it'll cook. If you have the fire and bring it to grass, that grass will burn. Or as we can see here, this pile of wood. We rolled a rock down a cliff, and that has its own sort of physics to it. And as we go on, we'll get lots more tools that let us interact with the world and the elements in cool, creative ways.
Yeah, it's just all a really fun thing. You just get to experiment so much, and especially with the Koroks here.
And also introducing the element of annoyance.
Well, yeah, because if you want to 100% complete Breath of the Wild, it means it was going to be a mammoth task anyway, but then they threw in the Koroks and the Korok seeds, and oh boy, there are a lot of Koroks, and the reward for getting all of the Korok seeds is not great. Let's put it that way.
No, shut up, it's amazing.
This is Gold Skull is all over again, but worse.
It's amazing in how awful it is. That's the that's the main thing.
Da 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 da.
Just for reference, the current world record speed run for 100%, including all Korok seeds, is Johnny Boom with an 18-hour speed run.
That's something that I find really fascinating about Breath of the Wild, is that, like, in terms of its open world structure, like, it holds to it even to the point that the game has this diversity of times. Usually, a Zelda game, 100%, for at least most of the first couple 3Ds, you're looking at about a couple hours there. Obviously less than like 6 or 8 hours now for most of them. But for a game to exist that you can beat it in like 30 minutes, because that's usually around the any percent times, they're all around 20 minutes. The fact that you can beat it in less than half an hour,
26 right now is the top one.
glitches and everything included, still takes you half a day. Like, to me, I feel like that just shows how well, or maybe not even well, but I mean, it really sticks to how open this game is. That you can hold on to this game for a quick amount of time, or you can be dredged through this for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I think so. The main thing with that is that there's just so much content here. Like, the biggest challenge that you always have with open world games is that they can be massive, but there's not always enough to do in it. So you're just spending so much time just trudging through empty space with nothing to do. But what Breath of the Wild does, and even though its map is huge, it is very, very densely packed with things to do. You will still be, running about through empty spaces quite a lot, but you're very likely to run into some bokoblins or some items that you can pick up. There's a cool rock puzzle round some random corner pretty much everywhere. So there is so much that you can physically do, and that's just quite exciting.
And a lot of it's backed up with, like, years of Nintendo learning intuitive play. So things like putting Koroks on the top of hills, putting Koroks on top of really tall trees. Like, they know what catches players' eyes. They know what incentivizes players. Like, they've been doing this for a while. And so, like, and then that, I feel like that's sort of part of the Breath of the Wild contribution to this formula, is that, like, you see these things where it's like, I remember in a 2D Zelda, like, there would be something in an area like this, and then all of a sudden, da-da-da, wahaha, there's one of those little plant fuckers.
I like to call them spicy nut boys.
Ooh, that's like my third favorite kind of nut.
Oh, Mexi, only you would have a list of your favourite nuts, mate. It is good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
So how have you been keeping, if you don't mind me asking?
Mostly just a lot of work and schooling too, but like I'm taking school extra slow so I can just have time for work and stuff, but it just eats a lot of time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's the occasional moment of brevity that you can play some video games. I personally chose to play Zelda 1 in preparation for this commentary because I was like, why not?
Well, no, that wasn't a good idea.
It's okay. You're hidden. Thankfully, as you can see, there is stealth elements, and we have a little, volume slider at the bottom there that shows just how loud you are. So when you're hunkered down, you're nice and quiet.
I have forgotten what button it is to use your bow.
It was the R.
It's the waggle or the wiggle, one of those. And this is another kind of, change to obviously the Zelda formula is normally with the 3D Zelda, enemy placements were kind of like, okay, we have this circular room, we're going to place 4 enemies in. Good luck. Like, there was emergent gameplay in that, where it was like, how are you going to take them down? I mean, your bow and arrow can shoot them, but so could your hook shot. Or you could drop it. Like, you always had those options in a Zelda game, period. But they really were kind of taking it to the next level with this, with the open world game, where, you had enemies very strategically stationed. Like, you'll see a lot later on in the game that, like, you have enemies in areas where, you have the big guys in the back, or you have the archers in the enemies are placed in certain areas where, like, if you want to go through it, like, hacking and slashing every single enemy you want, you can. Or you can be smart and do here, where you can use fire to your advantage, you can use bombs to your advantage, you can take them down and use their enemies again, or use their items against themselves. So I really like just kind of the little tweaks to the combat here, where they were emphasizing now more than ever the emergent gameplay of, it's not a matter of, are you going to take these enemies down the right way? It's, how are you going to take them down? It's totally up to you. You figure it out.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's sort of really exciting with this, is that pretty much every other Zelda game, there is a set way that you are meant to take down enemies. Obviously, there's still an element of that in that certain enemies have certain tells, but you have so much freedom in your approach to taking them on. Because you've got so many different weapon types, but you can also just use your environment to your benefit. Like, you want to throw a rock down, like a boulder down, and smush a bunch of enemies? You can do. It works. You want to, set an entire place on fire? You can do. It works. It's just great, and it's really exciting to be able to get to experiment.
Do you want to use Bayonetta's Witch Time? You can! It works! It's here!
And then it gets nerfed to hell.
Yeah.
That was a smart. Oh my god! Nope, don't like that. Raise the shield. You got it.
Very useful for blocking them arrows.
Okay. There we go. Now we got a nice 2-hander.
Well, a one-hander, but same difference. Yeah, I mean, I suppose this sort of brings up one of the things of, obviously, with our lovely weapons, you've seen a couple of them break already. It's probably the single most controversial bit of Breath of the Wild, is the weapon durability system. Obviously, for those of you who have never heard of weapon durability, I mean, you basically all will have done, but hey, your weapons only have a set number of uses and will break after a while, which means that you have either got to be careful with how you use your weapons, or make sure that you're getting a massive amount of stock in order to make use of them all. Now, I'd say inherently it's not a massive problem, because the game does give you a huge plethora of weapons to play with. Like, you are not generally going to struggle to find weapons, but you may struggle to always have a collection of decent weapons to work with, and sometimes you might find a weapon that you're really quite happy with, and then it breaks, and then you need to find something else. So you need to sort of get used to not always having exactly what you want at your disposal, but yeah, it's probably the one major thing that people were not happy about with Breath of the Wild. What do you guys think about the whole weapon durability?
Personally, for me, I actually really enjoy the weapon durability for the fact that you have to change up your strategy. Like, for example, if through some happenstance Tom were to find, like, one of the strongest weapons in the game right away, it wouldn't break the game, because you'd only really have to be able to use it for a little bit before it breaks. You have to really, vary up your strategies, And it definitely leads more to that sort of survival feeling, which I really get from Breath of the Wild. Like, you need to survive in the wild, and part of that is stuff breaks, and you have to experiment and work with what you got. So, personally, I think it's a fine system, although I think it would have been nice if maybe once you get further into the game, maybe you got a bit of clothing that prevents stuff from breaking as like a, let's say, a completion bonus instead of what we have, you know? I feel like that would have been nice so that the option would be there eventually, but as it is, I'm more than fine with it being like this.
Wow, are you suggesting that as the player searches and finds, I don't know, like a countless number of useless items, they could be rewarded with a useful reward? Get this man out of this comp. Get him out. What is this shenanigans?
Disgusting. So you've seen me just ponce about a little bit and, get to grips with the controls in the wild. Now, things will truly start to open up a little bit.
Back to the weapons. Some philosophies call it attachment. You should learn to just sometimes let go of something, even if it's working out really good for you. Because it's never gonna last.
Yeah, I fail at that more than I succeed, sadly, but we live and we learn.
Then we hang on to the edge of tomorrow.
Is it from the words of yesterday or the works of yesterday?
I honestly have no idea.
This man knows. He knows the words! He knows the words!
I am one of those Sonic fans.
I heard people on Twitter recently saying that the lyrics were not rolling around at the speed of sound, but roaming around. And I had a bit of a freak out thinking, have I always been wrong? Is it roaming and not rolling?
So I have just Googled, I mean, obviously, why not? And it is indeed works of yesterday.
Oh, thank God. The map system. You find a tower, you activate it, Bob's your uncle. They're not always going to be as easy as just walking up to it and putting the Sheikah Slate down in the pedestal. Some are protected, some require certain objects like fire arrows or such, and you might need to upgrade your Sheikah Slate before you can even get to some of them.
Also, it's definitely rolling around at the speed of sound for Escape from the City. It is definitely rolling. I mean, it would be weird if it was not, considering it's Sonic and part of his whole shtick is rolling, but there we go.
Am I hearing a gamer girl in my mind? Is that you?
Please donate, and I'll stream for 15 more minutes.
For the past 100
Jesus.
years.
So yeah, it's been 100 years since Link, whatever happened to him, and he wound up in that little chamber. And yeah, let's just say we're playing a post-apocalyptic Zelda.
We always were. The first one's post-apocalyptic. This is kind of not my theory, and I wouldn't even call it that, but a lot of Zelda games take place after the fact. A Link to the Past takes place after the Sealing Wars. Wind Waker takes place after it's already been flooded. The only real Zelda games that you have some sort of preeminent action is Ocarina of Time, and we know how well that works and why we shouldn't listen to small children who have racist ideologies.
Yeah, very true. Well, I completed the main quest. Game over.
Alright, hey, and pretty close to about world record time there. Bravo.
John, what? I have a fear of heights, this isn't great.
It doesn't help when you have so few hearts as well, because it's just like, oh...
That was everyone's launch day. Everyone's posting was just, I've died 8 times and I'm having a blast. I keep dying, but something keep. It was, and I mean, we all go through it, and it's part of how this whole Great Plateau. Here's the thing: this game starts you off with safety wings on. The entire Great Plateau there's no difficult enemies. You're given basically every item you need to have any progress, or really to have one of each item for survivability. And the thing about the Great Plateau too, kind of back into Zelda in general, is that they put a lot of work to make sure that you didn't exit early. I mean, we're talking more than Twilight Princess put in to make sure that you did not skip any of that village sequence. Because even if so, there are ways to like break the fall damage, because the whole issue with the Great Plateau is that we're just so high up that we can't get down to the rest of Hyrule without hurting our poor dainty ankles. So we need to figure it out. But there are some ways that you can cancel out the fall damage. But even if you do that, the game just warps you back onto the Great Plateau. And even if you manage to land in water to avoid like breaking your ankles, it still warps you back to the Great Plateau. So there's actually no possible way that we know of yet to skip this entire tutorial section of raising the tower and then dealing with the little temples that pop up afterwards after you spring up the tower. Because then we get that all collected. And even skipping the tower, I think there's a way to pass it now by using so Link has a little front flip in this game. It's how he starts his little shield slide, but he has weird collision when he does it, so it's used pretty frequently to glitch into doors that can't be opened and to just skip wherever Link wants to go.
Shield slide, you say?
Yeah, you can do
Nope, not that.
Definitely not that. Not that either.
Sorry, I'm just trying to remember my buttons here.
Well, to be fair, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, because I know that both you and I don't know whether Tanner and Mexi, you've been as well, have been playing a bit of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which is a prequel game to this in the Warrior. Well, I mean, I've not gotten to the end yet, so obviously I know nothing. I'm going with it is a prequel, air quotation marks.
I will keep my mouth completely shut.
So obviously, and while that is, it's the same world as Breath of the Wild, same characters, it is just it plays differently because it's a Warriors game. So I suppose the difference between the play styles is always going to be a bit of I need to sort of readjust my brain, because normally when you switch games, they are completely different characters and worlds, so it's a bit easier to get into the flow of it. But when you're dealing with exactly the same world and exactly the same characters, a little bit more of a challenge.
I will say, watching some of this here, because I haven't played Breath of the Wild for a while, and my first thought looking at this is, wow, it looks like Hyrule Warriors with a good frame rate.
Yikes.
That is, that's the main thing. That Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity looks pretty decent, but this definitely looks better because its frame rate is so much smoother.
We're all waiting for that Switch Pro.
I want my add-ons, damn it. I want a Switch Double D.
Oh, there's an arrow stuck in my shield.
I always love the details. I love how it keeps track of all the arrows and you can just pick them all up. That to me is some of the most satisfying, engaging gameplay. Like saving Hyrule, whatever. But man, picking up them arrows, that just made me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
I greatly enjoyed the cooking system in this game.
And cooking as well. Like nothing like throwing 5 peppers into the pan to create like one of the best meals in the game.
If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching the video by Brian David Gilbert, who did a video cooking every single dish in Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
But with the exact ingredients that Link uses.
Oh,
so, for
wow.
example, if he only throws in, like, a couple peppers, then he has to make it with a couple peppers. And it's incredible. You'd be surprised at how far some dishes can be done and how little others can be.
Okay, spoiler but no spoiler. Where the fuck does he get the dragon horns?
So for the monster stuff, they substituted similar looking things.
Boo. Unsubscribe, thumbs down.
I don't know how to tell you this, Maxi, but bokoblins don't exist IRL, though.
Well, then you shouldn't be making videos saying that you're cooking with bokoblins if you ain't.
OMAN Owl Shrine. Ionuma.
Yeah.
There are many shrines in this game. There aren't dungeons per se, so they kind of split up everything into all these things that encourage exploration instead. Ideally, in Breath of the Wild 2, which is a thing, we don't have much information on it right now, we'd have both, but for a game that's mostly centered around exploration, I feel this is a decent compromise.
Yeah, I mean, other than probably like they mentioned with the weapon durability, the lack of, Dungeon of the Blank, Temple of the Blank, the lack of like those type of hard dungeons was probably like the other biggest criticism for Breath of the Wild, probably like around when it was launching. Like, because I know everyone was just loving the overworld. I know people now are getting more critical of the overworld. Now people complain that this game is barren by some definitions, but I do remember that not having like the hard big dungeons was a thing. But to me, I feel like gameplay wise, you get like 7-8 dungeons worth of content here. So Breath of the Wild, I think it's also part to tie into the open world gameplay. You're not gonna get items like spaced out like you normally would in a Zelda game. Like you don't have to complete Dungeon 6 to get the hook shot. Like no, instead the game's throwing you 4 main items that we're gonna get here on the plateau, and you can basically tell that it kind of became a dev toolbox at that point. And it's like, all right, now that we know what the player has available to them, I'm sure they had multiple teams with multiple people, but they just started going in on the individual puzzles and then creating these smaller, the Sheik trials. So I feel like you get like a dungeon's worth. It's just not in that same context. And also, obviously, you don't get the aesthetics of it. Certain dungeons are memorable because the aesthetic of how it looks ties into how you solve the puzzle and et cetera, versus with these, all the Sheik trials have the same backdrop. I mean, some of the puzzles are some of the most creative, but you don't get the aesthetic behind it. You didn't solve that cool puzzle in that mansion or in the base of a volcano. Instead, you just got warped back to the Sheik void and you had to solve it.
It's one of those things of the Sheikah temples are incredible and really exciting to explore and to figure out because, as you said, they are some of the most creative puzzles that the Zelda franchise has ever known. But once again, people like to have their things the way they always were, and so yeah, when they get things that maybe aren't quite the same, it's a bit questionable. I think ultimately what would be probably better is getting a better mixture, I suppose. So you have these more creative mini trials. Well, they're all trials, but these creative mini puzzle dungeons matched with the sort of more standard Zelda dungeon approach. And I think that would probably go down a lot better with sort of the Zelda audience. But there's nothing to say that this is a wrong approach. It's different.
So I was trying to be a bit clever with the mini guardian though.
That's kind of one of the most important things about this game, is being clever in different ways. Trying to figure out, how can I solve this puzzle with what I have now? Whether it's, you don't have the things that they imply. If you don't have the necessary tools, it doesn't mean that you can't solve the puzzle. In fact, it just means you have to be smarter about it. So, if you get to a dungeon and you solve it in a creative way, the game expects you to be able to do that. It's all about coming up with special ways of solving these things. Don't have any arrows? Throw a sword at something. You don't have a way to get somewhere? Use one of the powers you unlock later to just fly up and get there. So I love that. I love the creativity, because even watching this, Tom, you've done things so differently from me that I'm going, I never thought about throwing the barrel at the bokoblin at the beginning. That's something you can do.
Emergent gameplay. I need the twinkles.
Crusty jugglers, look at them.
Yeah, they're not the best looking fellas, are they? But still.
I would recommend, I forget his name, but he does a lot of Zelda theory videos. I think it might be Zeltrix. Go look up his Redead video. It has a interesting theory about these guys.
Never connected those. Yeah, I guess that would make sense.
I mean, mummification. It's clearly in Zelda because, mummies are a monster. But, if you just want to take it on that value, though, it does incorporate mummification in Hyrule history. And so, and it's not just Gibdas. It's not just hard actual mummies, but actual preserved people. So you have like the Redeads, you have these monks that are preserved. So I mean, that's always where it's kind of cool. Where it's none of these are like purely new ideas. There's a basis on just about all of this stuff. And then that was the other thing too. Was like, well, where was Breath of the Wild in the timeline? It's like, turns out it's just a big cloaca of Zelda. Like it just all pools together at the bottom at Breath of the Wild.
Ooh, I like that word.
Oh, Jesus. Where are you, old man? Oh, you were in the sky. That's where you were.
But from where did he jump from?
Wouldn't you like a paraglider, please?
Well, yeah, I mean, he could have abilities, but I don't know. Just wanna nitpick at where Grandpa came from. It's like I called you 10 minutes ago to pick me up, Grandpa. Where were you?
In the sky, young'un, in the sky.
Literally just earlier today, I saw a tweet that was, I love the dialogue choices in Breath of the Wild.
Yes, I saw that one.
Link has very sassy dialogue sometimes, and it's really nice, because even though, this is Link, it's a set character, you can't name him, but, you know, even though it says, oh, he's taken like a vow of silence, and you learn that from the story, despite that, he can be quite the smarmy, you know, main character, as opposed to the other Links. You can even, like, hit on characters, and it's like, huh, okay, this is quite a different Link, and I kind of like that.
Like it's up there with Wind Waker Link, because I mean, it's not to say like up first, because you know how it always is. This is the first Link with personality. It's like, okay, sis, but no, it puts them in that caliber too, and it's always fun when games do that with their silent protagonist, because the silent protagonist isn't just like hardline like no personality. Like even, sorry, but I know like that, you know, Breath of the Wild is actually based on Persona 5, but even like those games like Persona games, like where they're supposed to specifically be a blank slate character, there's still just that emergent personality from the options that you can pick. So it's always cool that they did do that with Link, because you know they've always had those options, but you know, to take it to the extreme, like Ocarina of Time, you just get basic yes or no's. Shall I repeat that? Yes or no. This, you know, it feels like Link has some soul behind the two glossy eyes.
That's the bit that it suppose is at this point that they've finally just gone, you know, we're just going to call him Link, because I think pretty much all of the games up to Breath of the Wild, you always did have that option.
Yeah, and that's kind of weird that's flipped.
Yeah, even though sort of, as obviously they got further along in the series, you look at like Skyward Sword Link and Wind Waker Link, and in terms of what they did in cutscenes and stuff, they did have quite a lot of personality. It just maybe wasn't so much there in terms of the text responses to things. So yeah, it's really nice to see that they've finally just gone, you know what, let's give Link sort of more of a intentional personality and just say that it's Link, because while that choice is always fun, we all know it's Link, and naming him doesn't add anything to it. So at least if you say that this is Link, you can then give him a personality which you can then, you know, modify yourselves as to exactly what that personality forms into, and it's a more fun way of role-playing it, I suppose.
And I could see that as maybe a change or a shift in maybe Nintendo's philosophy of you know, giving the players that choice. Like, you know, old NES games, there weren't as many options to let the player choose things. So I feel like back then, you know, the option of putting the naming the character, that, you know, that gave that to the player, or Nintendo gave that to the player as a choice to make. Versus with this, you know, you're able to make choices through the gameplay, through how you engage with the game itself, versus having to name who this character isn't as seen as much of a necessary. Like, plus, like, you know, with Nintendo having history, like, culturally, we know who Link is, even if, like, you know, even with the games, like, to this day, I'm sure they still design Zelda games to be like, you know, this is the player's legend. Like, you are the one to tell us how this story ends. And so I feel like maybe it's probably shifted that they're able to do that more with the gameplay, and you know, they're just gonna name the doll that they give you. It's like, hey, you're playing Link, but you can do whatever you want with him, versus here's this slashy pixel character. What's his name?
Yeah, I think you're definitely right, and it works.
It's also important that this is the first mainline Zelda game with voice acting, and I would definitely prefer them saying, saying, "Hey, Link," and not avoiding saying him like they do in, say, Final Fantasy X, where they call him that guy and him and Brudda. It's like, yeah, I'd prefer if there is a character to have a name. If there's voice acting, I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, otherwise you fall into that. It's basically like the example. It's like that's the textbook of if you're gonna have your characters talk, they better be saying names, otherwise. And it just because that situation goes even worse. Is he Titus? Is he Titus? All you done is just ruined everything.
Well, actually, the one example, which is fitting considering what we're playing, that does it kind of interestingly, is Genshin Impact, where you can name the main character, and in written dialogue, it will say your name, but then in the voice acting, they say Traveler. So the dialogue written will say, "Hey, this is my partner, Tanner," and then in dialogue, it'll say, "This is my partner," or they won't say anything, or they'll say, "The Traveler here." So that's an interesting way to do it.
Dragon Quest and Persona do that too. Yeah, where they'll roll with your title. If nothing else, you have to at least have that character have a title. Like that's the thing. Titus, he doesn't have a title. He's literally just that guy. So it's like, to be fair, it's probably an apt thing that they all just refer to him as that, because really, how else are they gonna describe him?
Kind of bucking the trend of Link having his iconic green tunic by wearing a shirt that shills the system we're playing on right now.
This is the way we shill our brand.
Shill our brand. Shill our brand.
To my understanding, I think that T-shirt is a DLC exclusive.
Well, it came in an EX chest, so...
Well, yeah, that is it. Because, yeah, I never got the DLC because, I mean, I'm lazy when it comes to DLC generally. Unless I really, really, really want it.
And you only really, really wanted it, which wasn't enough reallys.
So, any of the DLC stuff that is going to turn up in this playthrough is pretty much all new to me, which is going to be quite fun.
Yo, same fam.
Anything that's in an EX chest, that is going to be DLC exclusive, so you do just have to be aware of that.
Oh man, your inventory's full. See, here's also kind of the balance. So with the item breaking, it's basically a part of the way to like force engagement. It's kind of how the game makes you fight things, so you don't just run past everyone. Zelda 1 kind of does the same thing with rupees. Basically, like, quest items are hidden behind rupees, and really the only way you're going to be getting any decent amount of rupees in the game is to fight enemies. So even if you want to stay alive, even if you wanted to play in that stealthy manner, you're going to need to fight and engage in some enemies to get those rupees, to get the items, to continue the game. With Zelda, it kind of has that whole other thing where your inventory quickly fills, but then it also quickly depletes. So you're always just playing this like constant rebuild of your inventory. It's so fun. At least to me personally, but it does get annoying when you're like deep in the wilderness. But I think that's also to play into the whole prep for your journey, make sure you're all stocked up, yeah, like, because I know like a lot of early like NES games, like that was kind of their whole design philosophy too, when they would like design dungeons. They wanted them to feel like something that you had to sit down, plan out, like get your shopping list done, and then you go out and you tackle it. Like, so Breath of the Wild kind of has some of those design flaws. Like, it's really neat just seeing how, I mean, I was hooked on this game's development the second they said that what they were looking at was Zelda 1. Because, I mean, you can just watch the old HFC playthroughs. You should. But that's always been one of my big complaints, that once Zelda went 3D, the dungeons changed from figuring out where to go in like a grid to just go to room A to get the key in room B to unlock the door to room C, and like it was very like this was the game you were going to play, and it kind of felt just like Nintendo had heard that, but I'm sure they just got told that a bunch of times. So Breath of the Wild feels as much like it's in reaction to Zelda 1. It is in reaction to things like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword that had those very structured designs. In that, like, you can almost see, like, with the game where it kind of plays like, oh, you might think you can only do it this way, but we thought that around that. And there's, again, goes back to that you can do things so many different ways. Like, it really is kind of the big note with the asterisk and everything was that whatever the player wants to do, allow them. Like, the emergent gameplay is the end result for a lot of this game.
Kind of wish I listened to the old man and put some pins in the map, because I can remember 2 of these. I can't remember where the third one is.
Here's a hint. It's in the icy mountains where I played Zelda.
And also, you are definitely going to want to either get it. You can get a meal which helps protect you from the cold, or you are going to need to get clothing that is going to protect you from the cold. Otherwise, you are going to struggle, because while you are definitely good at games, Tom, you are not a speedrunner, and getting through to that shrine without protection is a difficult challenge.
Okay, first of all, I'm good at games. No, I'm not. Second of all, you're talking about the warm double. I'll pick it up.
Just the absolute reads.
I think that's at the old man's house.
Yeah, yes, it is, and also it's a doublet, not a double, but
I've never heard the word spoken out loud, Richie. So I'm like, it's like a fucking Pokemon. You have to wait till the anime comes out in English before you know how to pronounce it.
Jeez.
it's totally fair, because I have definitely fallen foul of that as well. I mean, I think it was actually today I was having this conversation. So it's an example. It is a bit embarrassing, but there we go. So obviously you've got Pilate in the Bible. This is literature related, so obviously. But I'd never actually heard Pilate and connected it to the way that it's spelt. So I was in a supervision lesson or whatever at uni, and it sort of came up and I was talking about it a bit, and I was just like, Pilate? And it's just like, no, that's Pilate. And I'm just like, oops, that's embarrassing. But yeah, it's exactly that thing of, if you haven't heard a word spoken and pronounced properly whilst seeing how it's spelt at the same time, they don't always connect up, and sometimes words are hard to understand sometimes. Like,
dude, it gets worse when, like, you throw in, like, knowing other languages, so I had to do this thing where, like, there was a hospital called, I guess it was like Our Lady of Lourdes, but it's not Lourdes like Lord, but like the French way. So, like, I saw this word and, like, my brain went Spanish, so I was like, okay, if I don't know how to say this, maybe I have to go with the other. So I was like, and I was sure that it was like Lourdes, but no, it's just a straight Lords. It's like, well, you're gonna have to take that back to the shop, because I don't think it's ready.
Anyone who's watched the Best Friends playthrough of Bloodborne know all about Father Gascoigne and how that went down. And yep, I thought he was Gascoigne because that's how it is in French, which his name looks ridiculously French, but
you throw a
no,
G
it's
in the middle of the word. You might as well be French once you throw a G in there. Like, those are the rules.
Okay, I think there is a chest around here. Ah, there it is. There's 2 of them.
probably the worst mispronunciation I ever had was the mascot of Pokemon Sapphire. I called it as a kid Kyogre.
There was like Kyorg. I think I was like stuck on Kyorg for like a year or two, cause it's like, no, that word is Kyogre's name needs to just get thrown out. That one's like a bad one too. Just about like any vowel.
Well, to be fair, one of the Pokéraps, they did call it Kyogre, so...
Well, like you said, once it's anime canon, that's... I mean, Arceus has basically said it himself.
But sometimes you're just like, no, this is wrong. And so the other thing that doesn't help is that sometimes, particularly with Pokemon, they end up getting pronounced multiple ways in the anime. You're just like, this is not helpful.
This is the worst source material ever!
Okay, not gonna go in there.
I think nowadays they have a official pronunciation guide that they put out. But yeah, back in the day it was a lawless wasteland where they, when they make a mistake in Pokemon the first movie, they say, yeah, we put that in there intentionally to make it so that the kids could see it. It's like, no, you just made the mistake calling I think they called Kadabra Alakazam or something.
Dude, if you watch the commentary for the first Pokemon movie, it's them just like covering their butts for like and they knew every single one that they got wrong. They're like, yeah, we know that that's not Pidgeotto, and it's like the entire half the commentary is just their translation damage control. It's hilarious.
It's just like, well, if you knew, you wouldn't have done the muck up, would you? Because
it's where it stands. It's just like these two grown men, just like it's funny. It's up there with like Twilight's commentary where like the actor just doesn't give a fuck. Like those are the best commentaries. Those are the commentaries you need to always include. Like, yeah, either the director explained to me how he made the movie, or the actors telling me about how little they gave a fuck about the movie. Those should be the only two commentary tracks included in any movie.
So basically what you're really saying is that it would have been really exciting to have an Alec Guinness commentary of Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to be fair, that would have been amazing.
I want nothing but the actors from like the new trilogy of Star Wars to be on the commentary. I want it to be them. I want them to dish all the Disney tea, because it was just it's not the happiest place on earth if you're not wearing a name tag. Those are really the only people that claim that it's the happiest place on earth.
Nice.
I mean, I suspect there are probably a few others who would claim it, but definitely you are correct in saying that.
Some of them are like a little scary about theme parks. I mean, especially when there's a pandemic and stuff going on. It's like, y'all couldn't like take a break? Like one break, y'all.
Look, it's their happy place. They physically need to go there to keep their marriage from crumbling, okay?
I mean, heck, when you have to base an entire personality on one thing, that thing better hold the fuck up.
Let me just say, right before the pandemic, I actually got to go visit the Star Wars land in Disneyland. And let me just say, yeah, when you're there, you go, oh my god, I can see why people are addicted to being here, because there's like a mystical air. Like, I don't know what they're putting into the vents, but it must be something addictive, because when you're there, you're like, I really don't want to leave. And sure, it costs me thousands of dollars to be here, but I don't want to leave.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, it's been a very long time since I went to... So I've only been to Disneyland Paris. I want to go to the other Disneylands because that would be fun. And yeah, Disneyland Paris was, I think, 13 years ago now. But there is something magical about sort of when you actually go and get to experience it, because it's not like any other place out there.
Have either or any of you guys watched Defunct Land's videos?
Yes.
They're so good.
Because I was gonna get to just like how you talk about how like, oh, I feel it. It's like, well, it's engineered, guys. Like it's a science to now they don't, because I think like a sad thing about the pandemic, didn't like most of the Imagineers like get let go or furloughed, but like they had boardrooms of like trained scientists like sitting around like figuring out how to poke your brain to make you feel that nice happy sensation. That's like, again, I get like enjoy like if you're there for the poke, get poked, but it's like I just feel like some people need to get a grip on it. Just realize it's like you didn't encounter real magic. Like I get that you felt it, but it's like they did that for a reason. Like you have to understand that this was a manufactured emotional response. And that's just me shitting on everything about that. My bad. But no. I like amusement parks, and I hope that they all just come back and stuff, so we can all get our happy pokes back. But it's just, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people, with the context of the pandemic, took a little out of hand.
What you're saying is happiness and love are just chemicals and nothing in the universe exists? Dog that you are to your chemicals in the brain?
No, fool! If you're the chemicals in the brain triggering the response, then how can you possibly believe them?
Will you fight or will you perish like a dog? Yeah, it's so good.
Like I know the internet has a thing with Kermit memes, but Mickey memes need to come back, y'all.
I'll be down for some Mickey memes to return, because, I mean, the House of Mouse does it giveth and it taketh away in so many different areas.
Not just the House of Mouse, the House of Mario can give and take away too. Like
That is also very true. I mean, Nintendo has been on a bit of a goodwill murdering the past couple of weeks for no apparent reason.
I stand by the idea of love the developers, hate the higher-ups, because there's a very clear dichotomy. The people who make the games do really good stuff, but the people who are above those people, much like most video game CEO types, they usually have nefarious intentions. So, that's where I stand, at least.
it's a business.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Much like how Disney does not love you, Nintendo does not love you. The people who make games love their games, and they love that you love their games. But the company Nintendo does not give two fucks about you unless you are giving them a dollar bill or a yen.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I suppose there was maybe a little bit of a difference when Iwata was alive, just because he's sort of always going to be an absolute exception to how most developers and publishers work, because Iwata was very much a gamer first, and even though he didn't always make the best decisions for things, and he definitely did get things wrong.
He's paid to make the decision.
Exactly. And he still did everything in his power to do the right thing where he felt he could. And yeah, while it didn't always work out, a lot of the times it did, and that's awesome.
It does come down to like that personnel, the philosophy, the environment, the culture and the economy. Like those things do play into the decisions that Nintendo is going to make. Like the decisions that Nintendo made in the 90s aren't going to be the same outline of decisions they'll make now in 2020s and stuff like that. So, and then just also like you said, just like as the people go away, like you'll have people that have like just started working and like, their job is they're told, hey, there's a thing going on in the internet with one of our IPs. Because the thing too is that like people get hired on for their job, maybe not as like a gamer, but as their job as a lawyer, their game as analysis, having a different skill set outside there. So their boss comes in, it's like we're having an issue with one of our IPs, and it needs to get settled. I mean, they're settling it in a way that it normally does get settled outside of gaming. Like any of these actions aren't like it's not to like pin them like they're the worst people doing a violation of human. No, it's not that. It's just not a. It's something I don't agree with, and so I feel as a fan, like I could take the opportunity just while we're playing it to like mention it that, like supporting like the fan games and those communities, and especially like those online communities where you very clearly are aware that keeping people at home and not congregating to play your video games is probably the nicest and best way to keep everyone safe and alive. Like. But again, like it comes down to like they own property and there's rules that come with property, and so just as a company, they're free to like work within those rules. And if it's not the same decisions they made in the past within those same rules, it's like, well, it's probably a different environment. It's probably a different philosophy, definitely a different economy. Period. So, like, not all to hurt on them, but like, I don't know. It would involve change of some kind. Because otherwise, it just seems to be a pattern.
As you said, like, there's every chance that things could change again in a couple of months' time. And you are definitely right in that sometimes somebody new comes in and makes a decision because they think that that's the right thing to do, particularly in law, because that particular area of law in terms of copyright surrounding game music and the use of games entirely has never actually properly been tried in court. So there isn't a precedent on whether it breaches copyright or not. Obviously, there is the whole argument of it, in this particular type of context that we're working with it now, it is fair use. But, as I said, it has never been tried. Therefore, nobody actually knows. So some lawyers might look at it and go, well, no, if you're putting our music on at all, then you are breaking copyright law and therefore take it down. But other lawyers might look at it and just go, eh. So that's a whole thing of different people have different views in how certain things work until it is actually tried and given precedent, and then people can work a bit more concretely to get a solution.
Yeah, that looks like the cabin up there. It's where you want to go get the duvet, as we said.
Shitty. But no, you kind of just dawned it on me that this is an international, just sort of like enigma, because I have the American law context of that, like, you know, American laws haven't touched like the internet, video game, new medias past like the 90s. So when it comes to any media, there's just the whole gray area of it that, like you said, hasn't been tried. We don't really know where. Basically, it's just this waiting for the first case in it. But you bring it up just from your context in the UK that I totally space on. It's like, no, we're not the. This is something around the world that people just, we're not too sure about video games. Like, I find that more fascinating. It's not a negative. Like, I think that's just, to me, it's just like, well, then all the more reason we should just always keep having this conversation about video games as that, like, just in their legal and their artistic sense. Like, what are they? What, like, I don't know. To me, I just think that's super fascinating. And like, this is something the world over that is to be discussed, to be explored. Mm-hmm. And it's like, love that.
Oh yeah, it's an exciting but terrifying thing to look into because nobody knows how it's supposed to work, and also because it is international, that throws in another thing, because yeah, every country has different laws and different approaches to things. Although I would say because obviously YouTube is an American company, it follows American law protocol, but equally that's never really been looked into as to how it works in different countries. We just sort of go, it's American company, we'll go with the American approach.
So that's usually how they... Because I mean, like, to add another wrinkle that I wasn't thinking, the game's made in Japan, so that's just like where the game's made and where the debates are had over it. It's like, come on, guys, like, the lack of uniformity on it is astounding.
Right, what's the third ingredient for this thing that he wants, Rich?
Would you like to know what it is right now?
I believe it's a Hyrule bass or something.
It is.
Nice.
And you'll want to cook a meal using the pepper, the meat, and the bass, and then you show it to him and it'll be like, great job, take this clothing that for some reason fits you despite our different body types.
I measured you as you slept, young man.
Tanner, I believe you skipped a key step, that in order to get the bass, we have to find Big the cat first. Big Fishing Adventure 3, coming soon.
Coming soon, always coming soon. Okay, I may be going slightly insane, because after you said Big the cat, I swear I heard a cat meow in the background.
Well, I mean, you do have cats in your house, so it wouldn't
They're
be
not
out of
in
the
my
question.
room, Richie.
Well, yes, but cats can be very loud.
Jesus Christ.
You should hear Buttons in our house, like, the other... I think it was this morning, actually. Like, he meows so loudly when he wants attention sometimes. It's just like, I've got my door shut, and I can hear him.
I've only recently come to fall in love with a cat. So like my entire childhood, I didn't have a cat because my mother and my sister are both like deathly allergic of cats. Like their like throats will close and die. So no cats. But my boyfriend has a cat, and I love him, and I am so sad that I never had a cat because I think they are the coolest little animals. And like, the only thing about him is he gets hyper aggressive in the morning when like he wants to be petted. Like if he wants to be petted, he like I have no choice in the matter. Like he comes up to my face and it's like pet me now, and he's just meowing so loud. I was like, okay. It's like, I don't know if I'm just like admitting to abuse here live on air, but man, having a cat is great.
Would you like to know where the Hyrule Bass is, Tom?
I believe there is a stretch of water just on the other side of the Temple of Time.
Yeah, you got it.
I still have my memories of the wild.
It's very good, because I have practically none.
So normally you'd think in a game like this that, there'd be some deep fishing mechanics or something, except for the fact that the game gives you unlimited bombs, which allows you to fish in what I like to call Southern American style, which is just continually throwing dynamite in the water until the dead fish rise to the surface.
Nice.
My boy, you knows. I was gonna say, it's like, that's just another style.
There's that shrine I was looking for, by the way.
I found that when I first played the game, obviously, I didn't look up any recipes. I wanted to just fully be like, all right, if I want to put it together, if I make a bunch of crap, I don't care. I guess with that approach, I kind of found myself as I got towards the latter part of the game, just kind of hyper focusing on just specific ingredients, and I was really only making maybe 3 meals once I knew like what I needed and what to make. When I was going into like important parts of the game, I was really only stockpiling on about like 3 or so different meals. But I mean, the compendium of how many meals are in this game, I mean, it's huge. You can make so many cool things. But that was just my sort of observation with that. I don't know if you guys like had a similar experience or kind of just, or just even like, what were your favorite meals to make?
That was pretty much it. I didn't even find myself cooking a lot. I would do the basic baked apples. I would do, putting in some of the stat boosting items here and there. But I didn't personally do the deeper cooking. And then I learned about, there's a ton of them in the game actually that I just didn't know about. So that's one case where, even early on in the game, they're like, hey, can you go to Hyrule Castle and get me a cookbook? And I was like, oh man, if I get this, I bet you will actually tell me what the recipes are. No, it's just, you read it and it gives you a single one.
I thought like there was gonna be like because there are later on we find out like there in some buildings there are recipes displayed. So like I thought like there would be written.
To be honest, that is probably an oversight that would have been nice to have. I mean, obviously, it's going to happen. Like, there's a lot of things where you look at something and you just go, oh, that would have been a nice thing to have if you'd included it. That is one of them. It would have been really nice to have a proper cookbook. And, hey, shield surfing!
Roaming around at the speed of sound.
I remember when they first showed that off, I think everyone was like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever.
Lost it. How did you guys feel after, so, I'm not sure if it was like the firstest ever, but one of my first, I remember the first time with Breath of the Wild, the trailer, where you had, we didn't know if it was Link, because he looked feminine, and that threw people really off for some reason. But you had a character on a horseback in the woods, and then all of a sudden the Guardian shows up, and so Link jumps up, shoots, man, and then all the theories. And I guess the biggest one I didn't even realize until I was telling is there was that people were kind of confused on who was going to be the main character for Breath of the Wild.
I remember that. It was not wrong because it's kind of just like, I mean, does it matter?
I thought it was going to be like a Pokemon thing, like, are you a boy or a girl? Like, they literally, I mean, in another timeline, Nintendo definitely did that. They definitely just made Link and Zelda the are you a boy or a girl of the Zelda games. Because it's there, it sets it up. They look similar. They're tied by fate.
Please give me your warm cardigan. Oh, is that? It's the Big Mac, the Whopper.
Link lays his tray in front of the old man. You got a good bake, but a soggy bottom. And those are the only 2 lines I can seem to remember from that show.
Buttery biscuit base.
Okay, so to this day, I still have no fucking idea what the fuck they mean when they say the word pudding. What the fuck is a pudding?
I'm with you there. The word pudding, when spoken by non-North American people, means nothing. Because I'll see a pudding, and it will be bread. And it's like, that's not pudding. Pudding needs to jiggle.
Right, so, thing with pudding is...
Don't you dare pudding-splain us.
God damn it.
No, please explain me. Please explain me, Daddy.
In the UK, there are multiple things which can be called pudding. I'm not sure of the full reality, but pudding in some contexts is a dessert of some kind. So that's where you get bread pudding from. But then equally, it's well, the main one that most people refer to is black pudding, which is sort of more of a breakfast pudding. It's weird. I don't think any of us truly know, but it's just safe to say that it can mean either dessert or just something concocted.
Why is nothing ever easy?
Like, it takes the whole, like, y'all thought sandwich discord was deep? No. Like, all I have to ask is, what is a pudding? Like, that's the philosophical debate.
There's a clear split between half of us and the other half of us here on what a biscuit is.
So Wikipedia has sort of come to save the day a little bit, in that pudding, it's effectively for
Is Wikipedia responsible for more diplomacy than anything else in, like, human history?
So it's sort of homogeneous starch or dairy-based dessert, generally, or something that's like a steamed cake mixture. But then, yeah, you've got some savoury puddings. I think it's something to do with that slightly... oh, God, what's the word? Bloody hell.
That's 2 words.
Pudding.
Sort of texture. I think it's that. There's a word, and it's completely escaped me. But stodgy is sort of the best way I can get it, because particularly like suet pudding or Yorkshire puddings, if you do it wrong, it can be really stodgy and dense. But yeah, so there you go. That's pudding, because, you know, these are the things that occur when you've got an open world, and there's just like so much that can happen that you're just like, hey, you having fun, Tom?
Yes, I'm having a lot of fun, actually. It's just like listening to a podcast.
Coming back to Breath of the Wild, we now have Link doing his best Farmer Simulator impression. Except instead of hay, it is living creatures.
It's bokoblin meat. It's a resource. It's honest work. You don't get much thank for it, but it's honest work, y'all. We all know Link has a history of, like, farming and ranch handing. I mean, it's the whole reason Ocarina of Time Link gets it with Malon.
Yeah, true. Also, Twilight Princess.
Well, I figured, like, that sort of ties it, because you just say that, like, oh, he's a ranch hand in Twilight Princess. It doesn't give you the full context that in another Zelda game, there was a Link with a love interest who worked on a farm.
Shit, the one in Twilight Princess might be a descendant of the Link and Malon from Ocarina.
Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I figure at this point, it's still kind of, like, weak-ish. It's not a hard theory, but, I mean, I feel like the further along if a theory still holds, you might as well just, like, it's cool to just accept, especially when Nintendo has proven time and time. They don't care. They may eventually, like, bring someone on to just, like, figure something out, draw us a chart so that we can make an art book. Like, they'll do that every once in a while, but in the grand scheme, like, they're not caring about, like, the finer details, the finer sinews between the Zelda games.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
No. Like, they're meant to be independent. Like, even though the second game is a sequel and there's it's kind of funny. Like, I've actually met people that have played Majora's Mask without playing Ocarina of Time, and it's like, that's cool. Like, that to me, I'd like to see what that kind of like perspective. It's really fun because they have no idea about like the asset reuse. Like, because with me when I play Majora's Mask, like, it happens every time I see, you know, like the sisters is like, hi, young and old Malon, like they peep up. But if you play just Majora's Mask, it doesn't it doesn't happen, and so they get an entirely different experience of Majora's Mask, and it's so cool. So like, it's almost one of those things where like playing the games individually can always sometimes be a benefit.
Oh yeah.
Good old stasis.
Ah, this broken mechanic.
Gosh, yes.
It's interesting because when I first got it, my first thoughts were, okay, so I can use this on moving stuff, and yep, that should be good. And it wasn't until much later I learned, oh, you can use this on a lot of stuff, including lots of enemies. And that's when I sort of went, oh, we have a lot of stuff we can do with this.
And I'm pretty sure stasis is generally the way that people break travelling through Breath of the Wild, because what you can do is you can stand on an object, stasis it, or stasis an object, attack it to within an inch of its life, stand on it, and then you'll go absolutely flying, and it's hilarious and amazing and awesome.
That's not the current fastest way to get around, though. Instead, what you do is you use a ice arrow on an enemy and then shield surf off their face. And for some reason, that interaction causes you to just fly so far. And it's great.
Fair enough.
But that's not all. Another method to get really far in this game involves using the two types of bombs. So you have the square bomb for that just stands put, and you have the circle bomb that rolls and slides around. You can, with proper timing, leave one bomb, have Link do a little jump, and leave a bomb behind himself. Detonate the first bomb so that explosion basically hits the second bomb and has the second bomb launch Link. So it's not the explosion, but rather the unexploded bomb pushing him that launches him into the air, and you can travel quickly in Breath of the Wild that way as well. So again, it's the best thing about like open world game design. It usually opens the game up to having all kinds of shenanigan breaks, and it's beautiful.
By the by, there is usually a secret chest in each of these shrines, so if you haven't gotten it, I don't think it will have a little treasure chest sign on the map next to the shrine. Yes, more please, give me more. That was the tricky part, that was the one I really should have marked beforehand, but now I can go straight to the ice one, because I know where that is.
With the stasis launch, I think it was like they were stasis launching and like climbing onto a tree and getting really high up to get to this shrine, as opposed to getting, you know, like peppers to get cold resistance through food, or getting the cold resistance through the outfit. Another thing, if you get to the top of the mountain with any method, you'll run into the old man, and if you haven't seen him already, he'll give you the outfit at the top of the mountain as well. Again, the game is so well designed, like every peak that you can like point out, they've thought ahead and are like, all right, something's on the top of there waiting for you. It might just be a Korok seed, but there's something up there, because you know they know that it's just satisfying to get to the top of something. It's not just a matter of like getting the strategic view, like the meme of I have the higher ground. Like, no, it's having higher ground is really important, especially if you want to explore in this game. And so like there's an incentive to get to high ground at every point in Hyrule. Like, it's designed that way.
Here's another tip for you all. Say you've got a weapon that you don't want to break, but you've got like a combat challenge. You can do this. Spin, 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 put away. Because if you slap it on the floor, that will hurt it. If you put it away, it doesn't.
That's that strategy is also really good for the stasis launch. That's how they avoid doing the slam, so that they have enough time to do the arrow aim and then jump onto either the rock or the tree, so they cancel out the spins.
Yeah, because you can build up the power using the spin, but then for the specific aim, all you need is one single arrow pointing where you want it to go, which I think is hilarious. It's like, yeah, you just need the one.
Isn't that poetic?
Dum-dum.
Yeah, this whole like frozen river area. So the plateau was the one area of the game. I haven't played through Breath of the Wild a bunch of times. I played through it once, a couple times. But the Great Plateau was the area that I tried to at least get everything. Like, I got all the Korok seeds and everything. Everywhere else, I just got, like, the shrines. Korok seeds were just kind of as I wanted and needed. But this area by the Frozen River, I had so many stupid deaths here. Just,
It's easily done.
it is, like, even as a beginning area, like, this is a solid tutorial area. Like, this is no Ordon province. Like, it's not as iconic as Kokiri Forest, but, like, this serves all the purposes. This checks the boxes. Like, this, it's quality game design. It's everything put together. Like, it gives you all of the little tools to play with so that when it's time to go out into real Hyrule and play the big boy game, like, you're ready.
Well, it's such a wonderful vertical slice that they were able to, like, because you get so much of the game in just this little part that, you know, they went to trade shows with this as the demo for people to play, and we were discovering new things about, you know, this small area throughout all these people playing it. And this is where even I argued, and I know some people argued against me for this, but I say that even though this game is single player, it's one of my favorite multiplayer experiences, which is, hey, did you hear about this? What? You can do that? And, like,
well,
no other game has really been that much in terms of, like, the secrets and the stuff you can find since this, and in my eyes, I think that's just as multiplayer as, you know, other games of similar types.
That ultimately is a full-on callback to the original Legend of Zelda, because if you think back to how people beat the original Legend of Zelda, it was speaking to your friends about the things that you kind of found, the secrets you clocked, and then obviously people making their own maps and figuring things out from there, and it was a really collaborative process, effectively. And Breath of the Wild feels very much the same.
The Nintendo Power subscription is basically, like, multiplied when the first Legend of Zelda came out, because it was people wanting the tips, the tricks, and yeah, Richie hit the nail. That was goes back to how all of that. It's kind of cool, like, because that incorporates the modern, you know, social media versus in the 80s it was, you know, the printed media that Nintendo was putting out. It was kind of, you know, Nintendo made the game, but Nintendo then made the magazine to explain the game. With Breath of the Wild, like, bravo, they let social media have fun with it, and we all know how awful that can turn out. So for them to get a positive return on that whole experience, it's like, good job.
Oh god, yeah, it was everything that they possibly could have wanted, really. So I suppose since, you know, we've blathered on a lot, what are your thoughts on the whole thing, Tom?
Wait, what are we talking about? Sorry, I was kind of in the zone. I was in the wild itself, though.
Just the whole thing of, obviously, the collaborative process element of how Breath of the Wild works, and the fact that everyone kind of, like, keeps finding new things constantly and sharing it, and sort of how that harkens back to the original Legend of Zelda.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I could just see a bunch of friends sitting around and exploring this world. Like, oh, maybe we could go that way. Maybe there'll be a shrine there. Maybe we'll find a treasure chest there. Oh, I really need some, you know, food. I hope there's some trees coming up with some apples on and so on. So
They could even record a commentary.
yeah, you could even record a 2-hour commentary, which will be going up as the first part, just in case you're wondering why this part hasn't finished yet.
So basically, first part is Great Plateau, then.
Yes.
It's totally fair. Because this is the hilarious thing whenever we do these live playthrough things. It's just like, so what's going to turn out to be a part sometimes? Because it's like, that'll be alright.
I definitely remember on release there, one of the best experiences was one of my friends coming over and just being like, dude, did you see a dragon? And I'm like, a what? He's like, dude, dragons! And I'm like, what?
Whoa.
And just like that experience of just having like a conversation about this world that feels like there's so much to it and discover that I was like, oh, it was so good. Again, in my eyes, that's more multiplayer than a lot of games' multiplayer experiences.
The other thing that really works about Breath of the Wild is that because there's so much to find and so many sort of hidden things, it really truly does feel like you're exploring this place, this world, and it probably had the most surprises that I've had from a video game in a long while, because you just never knew what was coming, and that's awesome.
Oh, I'm coming for your shrine. I'm slowly getting there.
Now, I don't know how much experience you guys have with snow, but there's no way you'd be able to climb it like Link did there. That stuff is packed solid. It might as well be trying to grab concrete walls.
Yeah, which, I mean, Link
He also
does. So
That's Link's superpower.
you look at any of these rock surfaces that Link climbs up in this game, there is no physical way, because there's not anything jutting out that you'd be able to clutch onto to be able to make your way up. But hey, that would, like, while technically possible to develop, that would just be a nightmare and also not fun. So
I'm of the theory, the hero of Hyrule is a bloodline, so that makes it genetic. So that means there are traits assigned to it. So I'm gonna believe that we got some, like, mutant part goat men going on here. Like, Link just has some really good traction. It's what makes him so qualified as the hero of Hyrule. It has nothing to do with, like, the whole courage, blah, blah, blah. That's just the myth to make him feel good. It's really just that, damn son, he's really good at climbing a mountain in snow. That's it.
I mean, could you also say that he's sort of part Spider-Man?
Yeah, I was gonna say, when Link was a kid, he was bitten by a radioactive Skulltula.
Well, I didn't want to drop the ball and spoil that Link is confirmed to come back in Spider-Man 3, but
Man, now you just ruined the end of Age of Calamity now.
that's all. But oh no. Well, time to ban myself.
Oh, jeez.
Remember the half-human, half-Skulltula hybrids that were in Ocarina of Time there? So, I mean, obviously, we said, Marin was the mom, but it was actually one of those spider ladies.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, who went through the process of collecting all the Skulltulas? Like, the game is de-incentivized to get all the Skulltulas. You're only incentivized to really get up to the heart piece. By the time you get the final wallet, like the final prize is irrelevant. It's infinite money. Like, so really, the game itself is set up to where you don't want to even lift the curse off everyone. Lifting the curse off everyone would require, like, actual compassion. Like, you'd be doing it because you want to, not because the game incentivizes it. So there's the possibility that some of the curse isn't lifted off everyone because Link feels a hearty attraction to one of them.
Tell me this, Mexi, without spoiling Age of Calamity, is it canon?
Oh yeah, it's. I was thinking it was gonna be like Chain of Memories canon, but it's not. It's not. It's as canon as any other Zelda, whereas it fits on a timeline, and it fits really close to Breath of the Wild. So like, but it's in the same way where it's like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. They're canon to each other, but they're not. They neither affect each other to any degree. So like Zelda knows its timelines and time travels. Like I said, I'm always waiting for that one, because I like it. I'm always waiting for that one Chain of Memories situation again, where like that spin-off game becomes a crux. Like we're like, nope, you have to play it. And it's like, yeah, you have to play the game.
So it's kind of self-contained while having a few surprises, but ultimately it doesn't make this game invalid.
It is nothing. No timeline is invalid.
What I would say about, from where I'm at with Age of Calamity, even though it's a game that comes, like, first, I would still say you need to play this first.
Oh yeah, no. It's a sequel.
Yeah, don't go in chronological order. People who are like, well, I like to play my games in their chronological order. That's why I started with Metal Gear Solid 3. I want to strangle them. Why would you do that? Release order is the order you go in, because that's what they expect you to know!
Yeah.
Well, like, even if they wanted to use that argument, I'd still be like, well, then you're getting the beginning of the story in this game. Like, it all starts and begins at Breath of the Wild. Like, whatever plot you're getting out of there, you're getting a minor context. Like, you're not getting it all. It's very fractured, so.
And we haven't really gone into the story yet, but I actually like the way this game tells its story. Because obviously Link is amnesiac right now. He doesn't have most, if not all, of his memories of said calamity. So you're kind of piecing that together as you go through the game.
I thought he was an ex-soldier. Never mind. My bad.
You're using Sony terms. It disgusts me. You need to make it Nintendo.
He got invited over for a delicious cake.
Okay. See, now you've put it on that kind of level. I get it.
He got a distress call about a baby or something. I don't know.
Okay, now you're just insulting me. But seriously though, Astro's Playroom playthrough should be out this afternoon.
Hey! He says, despite the fact that at this point in time, we have not done it yet, but it's a short game, so...
I was gonna say, I'm like, wait... timelines.
Well, the only reason I asked about Age of Calamity to you, Maxine, is because by the time this part goes out, I probably will have completed it.
Yeah, to be fair, I fully expect that I will have beaten it by the time the next recording session comes round.
I'm a punk-ass bitch. I don't know. Dynasty games don't really get me, so I just kind of went in for the spoilers and the lore, and I was like, oh, alright. Maybe once I become a real gamer, I'll give it a whirl.
Oh, he wasn't a real gamer, so he ceased to be.
Oh shit! He should have been drinking more Mountain Dew!
Maybe that's why he disappeared, actually. The molecules just melted.
You need dew to stabilize your gamer genes, y'all. Like, this is gaming 101. It's basic stuff.
Who is rolling these? There's nothing left on this mountain.
Magic. I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable explanation in this world.
No, it's as the old man was being whisked away, he decided to kick them on his way out just to mess with you.
It's literally the iceberg rolling bullshit theories at you.
Sure it is. Alright, let's go visit the Temple of Time in a second, because there's more stuff to do.
Not really a spoiler either, but like Zelda games can be categorized in one of two categories, whether the Master Sword is located in the Temple of Time or in a forest. And so this game is of the forest category. Not a heavy duty spoiler since we know the condition of the Temple of Time, but I always think that that's a neat, at least through or motif in the Zelda games is, you know, the Master Sword is used frequently, it's used just about all the time, but its location isn't always set depending on the plot. Sometimes it's within the Temple of Time, sometimes, I don't think they've done Hyrule Castle yet, not with the Master Sword. They could have maybe done it with like other blades or blade upgrades, but like Master Sword usually gets relegated to either Temple of Time or in a forest. Oh no! At least you saved yourself.
So close.
Lost Woods originally are just some kind of other forest, but like I do like how, you know, they use the Temple of Time intentionally because that's, you know, it's iconic. It's something that we can all recognize, or at least someone has seen someone or seen Ocarina of Time. Y'all have heard of an Ocarina, so you know it works just for that familiarity.
Shoutouts to Link just one-handedly eating steak while he's nearly dying from the frozen water. That's kind of incredible.
Very impressive.
It's preserved. You don't necessarily have to cook the meat to make it appetizing.
Well, no. It's the fact that he was holding on to an iceberg with one hand and eating meat with the other. That's the impressive part, because...
No, true.
You know, your wrist strength is only so much, and meat you have to kind of rip at to eat.
Sorry, the darker coloured ones are more dangerous.
He peekabooed around the tree.
This game goes on the original Legend of Zelda method, and first death!
Woohoo!
red enemies generally are sort of the weakest variety, and then you got to blue, and that's a more difficult variety, and so on and so forth.
Simple stuff, people.
He was a spicy lad. Hey, it took over 90 minutes for me to die.
That's better than most people's first playthroughs, for sure, even though it's not your first one. But it's been so long, honestly, it might as well be. Because I know, I'm looking at this, I'm like, I don't remember 90% of the stuff that happens in the Great Plateau here.
And also, to be fair, considering you are playing at 3 hearts, because that's how everybody starts Breath of the Wild, it means it's not going to be an easy ride. Like, obviously some people will find it easier than others, but, like, it's still a challenge, because most Zelda games these days, you've started with about 6 hearts, so it's been sort of a little bit more reasonable to sort of have your beginning journey. But this goes back to hardcore original Zelda challenges of, yeah, you're going to have a challenge.
You're gonna die. You used to die a lot in games. Like, I know, like, Dark Souls gets that rap of, and I'm using this in a positive context, it gets that rap of using death as a learning mechanism. Like, you're supposed to die a bunch of times so you can listen. But that's old NES. Like, even from Dark Souls' development, like, it's dated back to NES, that, like, death was used as a learning mechanism, but gaming philosophy kind of changed, where, like, death became a punishment, so it became a thing to be avoided. It became something that you needed to help the gamer not to experience, but for some reason you still needed to include in the game as, like, that ultimate, like, you're not doing this right, or something, at least like some way to, like, it's a guide, but it's meant to be, you know, like the Lakitu in Mario Kart. He's telling you you're going the wrong way, not because you're playing the game wrong, but you're going the wrong way. So with this, like, the Great Plateau, I like how it does keep you at 3 hearts, how you cannot upgrade your health. I mean, you can with probably some food varieties, but the way to get more hearts is still further out. So for the Great Plateau, it feels like it's designed to instill that caution in you. It's designed so that you don't just go jumping off every cliff because you remember the 3 times you thought you were safe and you effing died because you were just a little too high. Like, it's to instill all those. You're supposed to learn from every death. You're supposed to, ideally, experience every kind of death. You're supposed to fall, get stat. Like, it's supposed to be like re-zero times. You're supposed to die every awful way and come right back and be like, all right, not again. So that when you when you go to Big Hyrule, when you start to pack on the gear, when you start to pack on the hearts, those moments are still in you. You still had those moments. And, like, again, that goes back to old NES design too. It's the way you feel when you get to the end of Zelda 1. It's the way you get to when you get to the end of Metroid 1. It's like, you're just so whompingly powerful. You're like, wait, how did I used to die to all this stuff? But it's like, you were dying to all that stuff to learn the lessons of the game. It was to instill that caution in you.
And if you're having too much of an easy time with this, you know, which is already a decently hard game, you can, of course, if you get the DLC, get Master Mode, or Hero Mode, I think, which is even harder and will put endgame level enemies into the Great Plateau.
What? That's amazing! I didn't know that. It's genius. Like, that is Kaizo Mario ass shit. Fuck yeah.
There's Lionels, there's floating platforms with bokoblins on them that will fire arrows at you, and because you're this early in the game, you have very little you can do to get them down, aside from maybe shooting down their stuff, so it's crazy. And I think the next time I play, because I played through this game the one time, and then pretty much never touched it again. I think I went to go see when they added the Xenoblade 2 armor. I went to go, like, see that in the game, and I got it, and I'm like,
Xenoblade 2 for the Nintendo Switch?
The armor of the superior Xenoblade protagonist. Oh, whoop.
Oh, shit!
Whoop, whoop. Did I say something? Oh, never mind. But I went to go see that and didn't do it again. Yeah. But I think if I were to play it again, I would play it on that hero mode, because from what I've seen, the amount of changes are actually really cool and would make it quite the fresh experience.
It's quite exciting when you get things like that. And I mean, the other bit that I'd say with the whole learning from your deaths thing is, I much prefer the Breath of the Wild approach to that than perhaps the Dark Souls approach, because if you die in Breath of the Wild, it's because either you've done something stupid or the challenge that you're facing is it is a bit of a challenge. But
what's the learned experience? There's usually a action to death to like you learned it. Whereas versus Dark Souls deaths are usually meant to be like a try. Like you're supposed to learn from just from the try. And you're absolutely right. Is Zelda's dying and learning? It's very much no. There's a definitive lesson on each death. Like I died because I fell too high. I died because I didn't swing at this enemy who jumped at me, and it was like Versus a Dark Souls, like okay, so there's 3 enemies there. You get a different type of lesson, but it's just sort of those lessons are still learned through not by you doing a thing, but it's learned because you died.
Yeah, and I think I prefer that approach because to me it feels fairer, but also it means that I'm never not having fun, because even if I've died, I can still come back and tackle that moment again and not be as likely to die in the same place. Whereas I've never played a Dark Souls game, so I can never really say whether I'd have that with that at all, but it very much feels like you can go to the same place and keep dying again and again and again, and it's that whole thing of you run the risk of having the challenge but never getting the reward, and I'm not here for that. But either way, we have Tom, you finished the Great Plateau, and yes, this is King Rome Bosphoramus Hyrule.
How appropriate for an open world game to be ruled by a king who tells you to roam.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Yeah, nice.
I do like the ties all together. I mean, to have the old man motif from The Legend of Zelda, having the king. I mean, last time he had a very prominent role was Wind Waker, and his design is still very similar to Daphneus. I mean, I kind of prefer Daphneus because he's also the companion, so that makes it unfair as a whole. But like to see that his design, to see that his the themes from that character still carry over, that they brought him back in Breath of the Wild's design for the king, like that alone makes me sympathize with him. Like if he did not look like Daphneus, I probably would not like the king in this game. But you gave me another King Santa Claus, and I'm happy, Lord Nintendo.
Well, I mean, they're related, so they kind of do have to look sort of alike.
What gets kind of weird, because it's like, are they like the whole like the Zeldas and the Kings, because bloodlines and stuff, like y'all have a crown, so y'all understand that like bloodlines are weird. So that's why I'm like, I can't really like tell like, oh yeah, the kings are related versus like all the daughters are related through, but yeah, they do reuse like their designs on the kings.
I think the only characters that really constantly change design principles are like Impa. Like, we've never had a consistent Impa design, whereas we have had a pretty consistent Link and Zelda design, and obviously now a King design. Same with sort of Ganon Ganondorf design as well. So that's sort of an interesting wrinkle as well.
These relics, the divine.
It is kind of funny too that like with the consistent Zelda designs that like you see Nintendo do have tried to make an effort to like kind of distinguish Zeldas as well too. I mean, the Links have always gotten that kind of honor, but I think that always ties to being like the protagonist character. Like, but like with like changing Zelda's design in Smash Brothers. I mean, I know it's not a big thing, but I did just kind of want to like mention it. Just like they'll for on intention they'll highlight certain designs, certain themes on the characters. And then so this mural, sorry y'all, but perfect and very important in AOC. So remember, it's a good mural, but I feel like the whole hero design, it's kind of weird. It makes the hero almost look kind of Ganon-y.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Where he's really green and red, and it looks like the Ocarina of Time Ganon with like the trident swords. It kind of looks like that, but I think that's just like just a side effect of the fact that the hero wears all green. It just made more highlight the fact that I never noticed that Ganon in Ocarina of Time is also all green. So there's there's at least that foil to each other on those two character designs.
So the king here is voiced by Bill Rogers, who is mostly known as the new replacement voice of Brock in Pokemon. He's also Urian in Street Fighter V. He voices a lot of various Pokemon. That's kind of his big thing. But he also voices all the M&Ms in M&M's Kart Racing. Personally, while I love Bill Rogers' work, and this applies to both him and the other character he voices, I feel like his voice is too young for the king. He doesn't sound like an old man. He sounds like a 30-year-old, which doesn't fit, like, the big, like, huge beard king in my eyes.
Yeah.
It's probably, like, as a generally, I'm pretty happy with Breath of the Wild's voice acting. I know some people aren't for it, but Bill Rogers' two characters, King Rome and someone else who we'll get to later, are the two examples of, yeah, we should have typecast someone who's a bit older, I think.
Link, you are our final hope.
It's kind of weird. Like, the first time you see this cutscene, and there's ways that you can, like, review, especially this specific cutscene. You can review it multiple times in the game. It's the crux of the game. Like, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but I would recommend just, after you watch it this time, rewatch it. Like, maybe, like, halfway through you playing, like, after you've done a couple of the beasts, like, rewatch it. Like, it's a good refresher of, like, the whole game there. But, like, it's really important, and I know it just sounds really weird to rewatch it, but I think it kind of works. It's sort of, it almost feels like it's meant to at least have been to be rewatched within the context of the game, just as your own reminder. Because even within the game, like, it's very important about, it's the D-Day of Hyrule. Like, so, like, rewatch it and take note of every specific moment that happened there. You had, like, the Guardians possessed by the Malice of Ganon. You had the Divine Beasts that were set up and ready to take on the Malice get overtaken by the Malice. And then all of the Sheikah tech just ran wild from there, and Hyrule lost. Like, that's some shit. It's not like, it's not explained to you quite that heavy. Like, I know I'm exaggerating, I'm like storying it up, but like, it's the game is set up that way, and like, that's intense for Zelda. Like, that's a peak. It's off the charts.
Yeah, I would say that Breath of the Wild is the most melancholy Zelda game out there, because while we have had sort of those dark moments, and obviously the whole point of the original Legend of Zelda is, you know, the world is basically destroyed, go and save the day, but because obviously that is just a 2D old experience, you didn't quite get the emotions behind it, whereas this game really does a good job of showing that horror and terror that occurred, and sort of the decimation that came of it, but also the flip side of what can come out of a destroyed world and sort of finding hope again, and also just the whole mood of the entire game is just very melancholy, and that was a really nice change of pace, really.
Finally.
There's your escape. There's a flag has been lifted. Hyrule now exists. It's no longer just a giant cloud void that warps you back to the Great Plateau. Like, it's kind of impressive sometimes when you look at, like, you know, games take work. Games need to be scheduled. Like, people need to take a specific amount of time to do certain things. It's always impressive when you look at Zelda games, like, how much is in place, like, in the beginning of games to make sure that you don't leave the beginning of the game without, like, doing the beginning of the game. Like, it's almost funny because, like, again, like, I understand to have those along the whole way. You need it's like playing bowling with the bumpers. Like, you want them to go the whole way down the track. I understand that, but it's always just so funny the little extra that's always put in there to make sure that no one leaves the Great Plateau unless, you know, they got everything they need. And I feel like that's also kind of a reaction to maybe a couple years of seeing speedrunners just, like, completely decimate games. So it's always fun to see also that relationship.
or it's a reaction to when they bring in a tester, like a not a tester, but rather a
Definitely more that.
what are they called? The test audiences, focus group. They bring in a focus group and they say, okay, time for you to play this game, and they just keep getting decimated, or they keep getting confused about what to do, where to go. So like, okay, we can't let them loose on Hyrule right away. The average gamer is too dumb to be able to go into Hyrule right away. Let's introduce it to them. I mean, Cuphead tutorial incident at all,
Yeah, no, because I could imagine like if there was like a beta Breath of the Wild that didn't have it's so the warp back is called the impenetrable fog. So if they had a demo without the fog, that how many testers would like leave the plateau without bombs and stasis. It's like, and so you have the designers like, no, go back. It's like, well, I already jumped off the platform, I can't go back. It's like, I mean, you can see the nightmare of it all. Like, I understand exactly why it's there. It's just, I just like to acknowledge it. And just, I find it more fascinating than anything else. Just, to me, it's part of the Nintendo's whole philosophy is when they make these tutorial areas is how do they also make sure that the rails are up on the tutorial to make sure that no one goes out of bounds there.
It's also interesting because, like, I had a student who played Breath of the Wild, and I remember him saying, like, this is like a young kid, like 10 years old, right? And he was, like, when he got to the end of the game, which took him, like, a couple years, it was this amazing moment. And so you gotta remember, there are kids, too, who this might be one of their first major adventure games.
True.
And because of that, you don't realize just how much, like, how hard this would be. Because even us playing it, like, this game's pretty hard. So to be a kid playing this for the first time, it's like, that's pretty cool. Like, the how good you'd feel out of that, So
Something that I've noticed so I date someone who doesn't play video games is I take for granted the fact that knowing how to even like play a video game is a lifelong skill that we have, all of us in this call have built, and it provides us a context. Like when I give like a controller to like my boyfriend, he has to like look at the controller, understand. We have years of sort of like, okay, A's jump, press the stick forward to move forward. Like those intuitive things have been built. So games have to be at that level where like someone can learn that within the game. And like that was something that I recently like. I didn't have that context. Like it's always just been like I play video games. I talk to people who have grown up playing video games. Like we all just kind of know how a joystick works. I had to slow it down and be like, wait a minute. Every game has to be the game where someone learns to use the A button versus the B button versus the joystick. It's like, oh shit. And so like it makes all of this make way more sense too. But that's probably also why like I've been noticing like these types of things more in games, is because I've been playing them with someone who's also just sort of getting into video games period. And I kind of took for granted that I have like this history of like growing up with them.
One of the craziest ones was when Animal Crossing came out on the Switch, and my mom's like, what is this Animal Crossing thing? So I said, I'll give it a shot. And so I just had her try moving around, and she was so scared to move because she's like, I don't want to fall in the river. And I'm like, you can't. And she's like, why can't you? Well, you just can't fall in the river. Don't worry. But she's like, well, but if I move towards it, I could slip in. I'm like, no. And just like that disconnect of we're so used to the concept of invisible walls. Like that's such a small thing that it's like, man, you don't think about the non-gamers.
So I've been playing the Mario 3D All-Stars, kind of part of this whole like discovery thing. I've been playing Mario 64 as well, and it also kind of made me realize like people also have their first 3D experiences, sort of also a kind of moment as well too. But me and my boyfriend, we played Pokemon together. Pokemon is set up in a way where like water is not a hazard. Like if there's a path, you can walk down the path. So he played. I forced him kind of to play Pokemon Red on my 3DS. I told him he had to play the first Pokemon game ever to like appreciate anything else. So like I made him play Pokemon Red. He played through it, and then we played Shield. So he played through a couple Pokemon games, and so for him, like water's not a hazard. We switched over to Mario. And he kept walking off like the path. It's like, why isn't it stopping me? It's like, it's not like Pokemon. So again, just those things were like the game rules.
Yeah.
Even understanding a franchise's rules. Like, again, we grew up with them. We understand that Mario's not a game that's not going to stop you from falling off of a ledge. Versus, like, we know that Pokemon's going to be more on our menuing versus in the RPG turn-based combat. Like, it's going to be more like that. So, I just think it's been really fun looking at games in a totally different way with another person's perspective there.
Can I just say, Tom, I love how for, like, a long time now, you've had that skeleton arm just trying to grab your butt. And it's been in multiple cutscenes. Like, it's been reaching. And, like, yeah, Link in this game, he's pretty attractive. I mean, I'm straight, but I'd tap. You know...
No. This is the thirstiest, like, you could ever make Link be. Like, he's adorable, he's dependable, like, he can be sassy when he wants to be in the text boxes. Like, I thought you couldn't make a more relatable Link with Big Brother Link. Like, Big Brother Link to me seemed like Apex, like, relatable. No. Sweet, sexy, cute but like wild Link is where it's at.
Oh boy, we're hitting the mark where it's time to stop recording for the day.
Also, just to end that point, only Link that you can ever have with his shirt off.
No, that's not true, because in Twilight Princess, when you do the Goron sumo wrestling, he is shirtless.
Sumo Link, I forgot about that. Only game that you can have Link with his shirt off for a long period of time, then.
That is true, then.
Why are you planning to keep Link without his shirt for a long period of time, Richard?
I'm not saying that I would do that, I'm just saying that people have the choice if they want to.
Buffets are all you can eat, because they're delicious.
Also, people play Xenoblade Chronicles with shirtless Shulk a lot, so, like, people like these things.
What are you talking about? I played it with shirtless Shulk, Dunban, and, like, Ricky.
Oh, Ricky, your glorious pecs just brighten my day, really. So, yeah, welcome to the start of Breath of the Wild, guys, and there's a lot more to come, let me assure you, but I hope you've had a happy New Year's Day, and we'll see you next week when things begin proper in Breath of the Wild. Bye for now.